Chair, I think we're ready whenever you are.
All right. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Excellent. Let's get going. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm happy to be here with folks. We should have a pretty straightforward agenda today, but should we start with the roll call, Mo?
Yes, of course. Town of Ashland, Miss Mertz Gwynn.
Here.
Charles City County, Miss Adams. Chesterfield County, Miss Smith. Miss Walker. Goochland County, Mr. Goyne.
Here.
Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas. Mr. Hardman. Henrico County, Miss Smidler.
Here.
New Kent County, Miss Inman.
Good afternoon. Here.
Powhatan County, Miss Dutton.
Here.
City of Richmond, Mr. Wagner.
Here.
GRTC, Mr. Adarkwa.
Present.
CVTA, Mr. Parsons.
Here.
Plan RVA, RRTPO, Mr. Bushing.
Here.
VDRPT, Ms. Jubinsky. Mr. Woodson, or sorry, Mr. Hudson. VDOT, Mr. Hagan.
Here.
RMTA, Ms. Dean. Virginia Port Authority, Ms. Nelson. And we do have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I believe we've got a couple of potential amendments to the agenda. Chet, would you like to introduce the first one from VDOT?
Yes, sir. Happy to do that. We have an item on the agenda currently, item 7, for CVTA 0024. This has already been, this was a merger of 24 and 50, which TAC actually took action on back in May, I believe, to approve it. This was to address the actual language of the agreement, and VDOT Legal has not finalized their review yet. This was just in advance of putting it on the agenda for the full authority at the end of the month. So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to pull that pending the review of VDOT. We're not changing. It's not really a super important TAC concern anyway. We're not changing the funding or the type of project or anything like that. It's really just how the project agreement is worded. So we'd like to take that off at the request of VDOT and still plan on putting that on the agenda for the full authority on the 28th.
Very good. And Mr. Hagan, did you have anything to add? I saw you came with your camera on.
No, I'm good. Thanks, Chet.
All right.
Okay, and there was one
go
additional amendment.
Yes.
This is a request from Henrico County to add CVTA 0083 project agreement to the agenda. This was mailed out, I believe, this morning for everybody's information. This is for the Northgate and Interchange at I-64. This is kind of the remainder, which is left over from the VDOT administered portions that TAC has already considered. And this was for kind of the remainder of the initial regional allocation. It's not adding new funding. It's just kind of that last carve out that Henrico is going to administer this time. So we'd just like to, I guess, maybe replace item 7 with this one from the other one.
All right. Any questions for Chet or Sharon on that? Sharon, feel free to jump in as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer more questions if everybody's willing to add it later on in the discussion. But yeah, I would make a motion to to item 7 on the agenda to remove the VDOT project agreement CVTA 0024 and replace it with CVTA 0083 Henrico CVTA project agreement.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
I think we could probably do a voice vote.
Sounds good. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much, y'all. We will update that. So we'll consider Henrico's project in place of VDOT's. Thank you very much, Sharon and Larry. All right, so let's move on to approval of the July 8th meeting minutes. Do we have any questions about those meeting minutes before we move for approval as presented? If not, I'll go ahead and move to approve those minutes as presented.
Second the motion.
And we can do, I believe, a voice vote for that as well. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent.
And this is Sharon Smidler with Henrico. I'd like to abstain. I wasn't in the July meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
This is Sherry Adams with Charles City. I'll abstain as well. I was also absent.
Very good. Thanks, y'all. Okay, so we will move on to item number 6, public comment period. I see there are some folks online, but could we confirm if they're here to speak on some of the items on the agenda, Ms. Yamwema? I see raised hands, so that's a good sign.
Yes, it looks like we have two folks who would like to give public comment.
All right. Going off of what I'm seeing
three
on my, yeah. So I see 3 hands, and they've ordered with Mr. Cianfarini, and then Ms. Taylor and Mr. Sherrod. So we go in that order.
Perfect. Can you
Mr.
all hear me okay?
Cianfarini, yeah.
By the way, kudos on the last name pronunciation. Have never had anybody nail it on the first try. Good morning, members of the CVTA. My name is Kevin Cianfarini. I am a co-lead with Climate Changemakers RVA. We advocate for climate positive policies across Central Virginia. I'm here today to speak about the process to update the CVTA's regional funding framework and what we hope to see in the resulting update. As an organization, we advocate for a regional funding framework that provides as many funding opportunities for pedestrians, bikers, and transit riders as there are for highway and road development. Right now, the CVTA's funding framework limits transit funding so that it only matches external funds such as grants and limits bike and pedestrian facilities to regional trail networks and their connecting spurs. Eligible road projects have no limitations requiring matching external funds, nor are they required to be regional projects. Even the map showing what roads are eligible for project submission includes many local roads here in Richmond City. Central Virginia needs more transportation options. People want to walk, bike, and take the bus, but the infrastructure supporting those modes of transportation is severely lacking here in Central Virginia. Giving people the option to travel how they prefer starts with giving other modes of transportation the same funding opportunities that road projects currently have. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. We can move on to our next speaker.
Jordan Taylor.
Yes, we can hear you. I'm sorry, perhaps we can't. I may have heard someone else. Are you able to unmute? Okay, I'm seeing some technical difficulties, so let's go with
Let me
Mr.
try it.
Sherrod.
Ms. Taylor, do you want to try it again? You should be unmuted. Sure.
Might still be having some difficulties there. Should we try Mr. Sherrod while Ms. Taylor sorts that on their end? I found it can be helpful to try logging out and back into Teams because I've experienced this before, so apologies for that. Mr. Sherrod, go ahead.
Thanks for having me. I'm Jacob Sherrod. I'm a Henrico resident. I'm also the community coordinator at Strong Towns RVA. Among other things, we focused on financially sound transportation and productive and safe streets. We wanted to talk today about the change in eligibility scoring of projects. We support the TAC looking back at the document because the current framework is heavily biased towards highway construction and expansion. All too often, it costs more to build highways than is brought in with the new tax revenue from those highway construction expansions. Furthermore, highway spending can create a financially unsustainable pattern of land use that brings our region via sprawl ever outward and increases car dependency. Unfortunately, in this era when we already have a really well-connected highway network across the United States, new highway construction and expansion has a diminishing return for what are increasingly expensive projects. We're also experiencing a sadly increasing number of vehicle collisions. When we continue to put money towards highway construction at the expense of other modes, almost by definition, we're increasing the likelihood of traffic accidents. By changing the eligibility criteria to prioritize bicycle, pedestrian, transit, and safe streets projects, we can increase street safety and save lives. Finally, I would encourage the TAC, wherever possible, to change project eligibility criteria to prioritize more financially sound transportation and safer streets. We specifically support the inclusion of an ROI calculation in the eligibility criteria, especially if it is calculated with equity towards bicycle, pedestrian, and transit projects. We also support a more general change to allow bicycle, pedestrian, and transit projects in single localities that, while they might not cross jurisdictional boundaries, can still have regional impacts, like the downtown transfer station. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to talking with everybody more.
All right, thank you very much. I do not see Jordan Taylor back on.
I thought I saw Jordan Taylor for a moment and then I think hopped off.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Perhaps we have another opportunity. Let's try again.
Can you hear me now? Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Apologies. Sorry about that. My name is Jordan Taylor, and I work for Partnership for Smarter Growth. And we're a nonpartisan nonprofit that educates and advocates for Richmond region that sustainably and grows inclusively and connects communities. So I like to highlight 2 of the 5 smart growth principles that we would like TAC to consider as you all embark on updating the funding framework and formula. So the first one is to make transportation accessible, where we build a safe transportation system that connects people to jobs and other needs, whether folks drive, take transit, walk, or bike. And the second is to invest in main streets, which is to focus our energy in existing communities with a strong sense of place. From my understanding of the current framework and formula, it appears that not all modes of transportation have that same eligibility criteria. So we just hope that the TAC will look into this and explore opportunities so that all types of transportation projects, including transit, bike, pedestrian, and multimodal, have comparable standards of eligibility. Thank you for your time.
And thank you to each of our speakers. It's a great foray into item number 8, which Chet will kick off for us. I think there's going to be a really great opportunity for folks from across the region to have their input into this process and for this group to really dive into the weeds. So much appreciated in advance, everyone in this Microsoft Teams room, for the work that is ahead. Any other folks left online to speak, or should we move to item number 7? I think we're good to go. All right. Let's move to item number 7, formerly the VDOT project agreement, now Henrico project agreement, CVTA-0083.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm just putting up on the screen a portion of what was sent out to everybody this morning. As you said, this is a project agreement asking for approval, CVTA 0083, representing the short pump area improvements, North Gaten Road interchange at I-64. This is a small portion of the overall amount that has been set aside by the CVTA for this project. This is in the amount of $709,000 for initial survey. It will be administered by Henrico County. Back in July, we had the larger amount, CVTA 0057, set aside, and the project agreement was advanced for the VDOT administered portion of that, and that was 62 point something million for construction and everything else related to the project for the diverging diamond. So this is again, this is just a section that will be administered by Henrico for $709,000 to do initial survey. The request today is to recommend approval of this project agreement by the authority at its meeting on August 28th. Be happy to take any questions, and I know Ms. Smidler is here as well.
I see Barb first. Let's start with Barb, and then we'll go to Austin.
Is this a PE only project, or is it fully funded with some combination of funding?
This is, if I can respond, that'd be great. So Barb, this is, we had CVTA-0026. We had an executed project agreement for $3.185 million, and then VDOT's going to administer the project for us. So we are keeping 709. It's this Henrico's portion is just PE. We're doing land survey. And we had a previous executed agreement, but VDOT's administering it. So we gave them the remainder of our $3.185 million to help do, which was approved in July, which includes PE right of way and construction, which is for the 62 something million. But this one for today is just PE, just wrapping up some land survey work and aerial work. And then we're going to share that information with VDOT so they can proceed with like a design build. Does that answer your question, or if I missed something, please let me know.
Yeah, I think that's good. Thanks.
All right, thanks. Austin?
Yeah, I think you may have said it. What's the total amount of CVTA funds awarded to this project?
I want to say, Chet, correct me, but I think it's 63.185 million.
So whatever that number is, you're just using 709,000 of that.
Yeah, and VDOT has the rest. We had started
Okay.
survey work, and we're trying to
Okay.
give them as much as we can. Oh yeah, and Barb had
Gotcha.
asked about local funding. So we have 60 million in local funding that's going towards the overall. It's not just a CVTA regional funding that's funding this, and there's for the overall North Gaten short pump improvements, and there's PTF funding, priority transportation funds, that's going to North Gaten and I-64 overall improvements, PE right away and construction.
Okay.
That number was correct, Mr. Chair. Sharon said 63,185 was the total amount, and this 709 is taken off of that.
All right. Thank you.
Good questions.
Yeah, any other questions before we move forward? All right. Is this an action item requiring a roll call vote, Mr. Parsons? I cannot remember.
I think that would be wise, yes.
All right. Let's do that.
Yeah. All right. I'd like to make a motion for approval of the CVTA-0083 and Henrico project agreement for $709,000.
And Goochland will second that.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, it's recommending approval.
Yes, that's I assumed, but thank you for the clarification.
All right.
All right, so we've got a motion.
Town of Ashland, Ms. Mertz Gwynn.
Approve.
Charles City County, Ms. Adams.
Aye.
Did Chesterfield join? Yes, Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Goochland County, Mr. Goyne.
Aye.
Henrico County, Ms. Smidler.
Aye.
New Kent County, Ms. Inman.
Aye.
Powhatan County, Ms. Dutton.
Aye.
City of Richmond, Mr. Wagner.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, thanks everyone. Now we can get into the fun stuff. Chet, would you like to take us away for item number 8, Regional Project Selection and Allocation Framework Annual Review?
Yes, I would be happy to. So the agenda packet has a staff report, and I've got some slides to share with more details, but essentially what we're looking at is today taking a few minutes of everybody's time to do an overview of our current regional project selection framework, and go over the intent and the history, just kind of so everybody is on the same page. We have some long timers here, some new members, just making sure everyone understands what this framework is and why we use it. We do have an item on the agenda for the full authority at the end of the month, so that they can have some clarity on what we're doing and why it fits in our current timeline, to then instruct or direct TAC to take some attention over the next few meetings that the TAC has scheduled this fall, to kind of dive into the framework and look at different components and what we've lovingly called parking lot items in the past, to address questions that have come up during round 4, which was approved this past spring, and set us up for a new round of funding starting next summer. Most likely July timeframe would be when applications open. So this will give us a good good runway to be prepared and make sure that the framework and the project selection criteria are all satisfactory to everybody, and that we're moving forward in a good intentional way into round 5. So with that introduction and review of the staff report, I'm just going to kind of jump in to talk about some of the background and how we got to where we are. All right, can everybody see that? So we are in the Code of Virginia. The 2020 General Assembly, initially in House Bill 1541, if you wanted to Google it, established the CVTA. And one of the main components of that code section is how the funding, how the tax revenues are split. Once we provide for administrative and operating expenses of the organization, our funding is uniquely split differently than the other 2 authorities in the state. 35% in green shall be retained by the authority to be used for transportation-related purposes benefiting the localities comprising the planning district. So that's the 9 localities represented here by the members. 15% shall be distributed to GRTC or its successors to provide transit and mobility services for the 9 localities. And then the remaining 50% goes directly proportionally to each locality in the planning district to be used for transportation purposes, whether that is highway, transit, safety, staff programs, whatever transportation needs are identified to each unique unique locality and what its current needs are. So taking that step one, the 35%, to the next step, farther down in that subsection, the authority shall develop a prioritization process based on an objective and quantifiable analysis that considers the benefits of projects relative to their costs. This is our guideline. This section of a sentence is what instructed TAC and the CVTA initially to develop the regional priority project selection and allocation framework. So this is what is guiding us through the code and really sets us up for the very deliberate and thoughtful work that the TAC has done over our first 6 years of operation. So let's take that a little bit further. So this is kind of what has established our current framework. We have decided, and I say we, meaning the TAC, to focus on analysis methods that don't require creation of entirely new data sets or unnecessary burdens on either CVTA staff or locality staff. We really want to use data that's out there, that's readily available for all 9 jurisdictions, so that we can have the resources necessary to make those, region-wide decisions. Number 2, we want to connect to a methodology that is used by the TPO for the long-range transportation plan. The TPO has long, for 45 years, done vision planning for the region. We want to use that long-range transportation plan, that vision plan, to feed into the decisions that are on the table for CVTA to consider. So CVTA is created to utilize specific tax revenues to fund transportation needs. The TPO is already doing an amazing job at identifying what those needs are, and that is updated every 5 years. So utilizing that work to form the foundation for CVTA direction is included currently in our framework. Third, we want to utilize current models and tools, namely the travel demand model and ArcGIS or other types of GIS resources from the TPO to test project impacts. A lot of the criteria for project evaluation more than eligibility, is tested using travel demand model, volume, capacity, all the traditional stuff, plus overlays developed through GIS tools that look at accessibility, economic development, all the other environmental issues, all the other possible components of project evaluation. So those 3 things have gone into our current framework. Additionally, we want to use TPO linkages, like the criteria that the TPO uses to evaluate projects to be included in the long-range transportation plan. Using those as a foundation, I believe, Miles, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's 15 different criteria, at least, that are used by the TPO. CVTA, when it first set up the framework, used that criteria as the baseline and narrowed that down to, a handful, five criteria that is used to evaluate projects. But we started with that framework that the TPO originally used. So that is what is currently in our framework in terms of the project evaluation. Our historic goal has been to prioritize the big regional scale needs that are not able to be funded through traditional measures. That includes smart scale, that includes federal grants, that includes local general funds, other types of innovative financing. They all benefit from having CVTA leveraged funds included in their evaluation. And that's been the focus so far in the first 6 years, is to prioritize leveraging CVTA dollars to put the region at an advantage over other regions who are seeking similar funds. That really came to bear in the last round, Smart Scale Round 6, by the performance of those CVTA supported projects that actually won Smart Scale funds. We don't exclusively leverage projects. Sometimes there are projects that have been approved in the regional rounds that are fully funded with CVTA money. That's kind of an outlier more than the general case, but that's a possibility, and that's not excluded in the framework. Our secondary goal, in addition to leveraging and prioritizing big needs, is to meet regional needs in as many of the 9 localities as possible. That's been very intentional, and that's reflected from the leadership of the authority and the elected leadership in trying to be a place where all 9 localities can receive benefit from being a member of the CVTA. That doesn't always mean that we're going to base all of our decisions as an authority on data alone, but data drives what is being presented for consideration. And I think that may come, this factor may come to bear as we have further discussions over the next few months in terms of what types of projects can be eligible for CVTA funding on the regional scale, and which ones should maybe consider an additional source. We'll take a break there and see if there are any questions or comments before we get into eligibility in the current framework. I guess I'll look to Barb, Larry, anybody who's been here for a while. Did I say anything incorrectly? Do I need to be corrected on anything? Okay. All right. So the next item is current eligibility. So funding is limited, as we all know. Needs are abundant. So the criteria was established initially in the current framework to constrain the list of eligible projects to focus on those types of projects that would provide regional rather than local benefits. There are categories that are included in the eligibility criteria for different things like highway, bike ped, transit, multimodal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and different eligibility criteria for each one. So if we look at the current framework, the next couple slides have the different types of eligibility. So highway funds are currently constrained to limited access roadways, arterials, both existing and new alignments with certain criteria for volume, functional classification in the case of new alignments for projected volume, intersections, again, volume-based, really kind of carrying on that trend of looking at the big regional types of infrastructure that might benefit from this type of funding. High priority corridors was something that was added the last time, I believe it was the last time the framework was updated, including the arterial preservation network and corridors of statewide significance. Those two things, especially the CSS, are included in VTrans, which is the statewide long-range multimodal transportation plan that is updated regularly. Those two networks inclusion kind of broadens some of the possibility for outside the urban core for types of projects that could be included in the framework. We did develop a map showing all of the eligible highway corridors that meet the criteria I just mentioned. That is still active and can be updated depending on any additional types of eligibility we might want to consider. Every applicant was also able to submit a priority highway project outside of the criteria listed, lovingly referred to as a wildcard. I think many localities have taken advantage of that additional project for consideration. So that's been, I think, helpful in expanding the breadth of the eligibility framework. Potential projects are shown there on the right side in terms of the highway category. The next one is bike ped. really this for the regional fund, the 35%, this in the past has been limited to regional trail networks, which can be defined in our case as multi-jurisdictional with at least a conceptual alignment established. Infrastructure supporting a regional trail or spurs that directly connect to regional trails are also eligible. So those types of things could be, you know, the Capitol Trail, the Fall Line Trail, East Coast Greenway, and things like trailheads, parking lots, support stations can be part of that eligibility in addition to the actual trail alignments themselves. And the reason here, as I mentioned previously, is because the 35% funds have been intended to be used for regionally significant projects. Local trail sections or spur trails or other types of things can be addressed in other ways, including the 50% local direct funding from CVTA. There are no limitations on what that 50% can be used for. The next category, let's see, is transit, and that in the past has been limited to leveraging funds or local match funds for other federal and state fund sources or for regional capital. And potential projects there have been BRT, express routes, stations or centers. As you saw in the last round 4, Downtown Transfer Center was funded. At least partially through the regional fund. So that's an example, a real world example of that happening. I believe that the leveraging fund or match funds in the past has primarily been because of the scale and nature of fully funding a regional transit project. Has historically been something that you would need federal participation and support to actually fully fund. So I believe that's the history there. Excuse me. And then the other category listed here is multimodal, and that would be regional amenities such as park and ride lots, rail projects, port projects. Again, leveraging funds and local match for other fund sources. There have been, you know, this category has been funded recently with the Fulton Yard project, Port of Virginia, which we were talking about at the last meeting. Other types of capital improvements like that have seen leveraging funds from the CVTA regional category. All right, the last slide I have in terms of current eligibility, bridge projects. Bridge projects are kind of a unique animal. We do not have CVTA specific or even TPS specific eligibility criteria. The bridge has to be on VDOT's state of good repair eligibility list to be eligible for CVTA funds. Rehab and replacement projects, including betterment, will be categories in the most appropriate non-bridge category. So this is more bridge improvements rather than possible replacements or new construction. But in the past, there have been CVTA funds committed from the 35% to Mayo Bridge as a leverage source. So that's an example of a bridge category project on the regional side. Studies involving CVTA regionally eligible facilities are eligible. Also, studies that are part of an agency's work program will not be considered for CVTA regional funds, but things like, you know, interchange access requests, transit feasibility studies, bike ped alignment routes are all eligible projects for studies. That, along with the PE only category, again, involving CVTA regionally eligible facilities, are all types of funding that get a project closer to shovel ready, which we all know over the past couple of years is the key. So there have been some flexibility in CVTA regional funds, especially with the last round of the framework update, to provide additional ways for CVTA regionally supported projects to get to that shovel-ready standpoint, including conversion to 30% design, funding that through CVTA, and some other ways. But those are the 7 existing categories in the framework in terms of eligibility. Mr. Chair, I'll stop there and see if there's any questions. Okay, I don't see any.
Yeah, I don't see any either.
Okay.
Everyone's well versed in all this. Well done.
Okay, so everybody's been reading the framework. So what we have done over the past, 12, 14 months is watch round 4. Everybody had the opportunity to apply for regional funds, so you use the framework to put those applications together. We have received notes from TAC members as the past year has gone by on things that we should be considering for this discussion now. And I don't think, Mr. Chair, that it's appropriate to dive into solutions at this point. We want to wait till the authority directs the TAC to consider options for round 5. But I'd at least like to mention what was in the staff report, as well as a couple others that I think should be on the board for consideration over the next few months. So the first was first note, and these are all notes that either came from members or from Miles and my discussion in terms of things that are happening with the TPO. The first was arterial roadways. Should we allow projected volumes of over 20,000 as eligible? That is a consideration right now for new highway alignments, but projected volumes that meet the criteria is not currently in the eligibility for arterials. It is only with, I believe, functioning or active alignments that the volumes have to be 20,000 above. So that's something on the highway side. The next one would be to, and we could send out this list as it grows in advance of our next discussion. Should we allow inclusion in the locality comprehensive plan as a consideration for eligibility? It is mentioned in the existing framework for new highway alignments. Should we consider an overall requirement to show local alignment regardless of travel mode or type of facility? So that's something that I believe would be worthwhile for TAC to discuss. And it shows that consistency between, the vision plan and being ready to put something in the ground. The next one would be to revisit the eligibility of projects that cross jurisdictional boundaries. That is not spelled out in the existing framework as a requirement for eligibility. I think it is something that we have all considered would be a no-brainer in terms of the types of projects. If it crosses a jurisdictional boundary, that's probably a regional project, but we don't have anything spelled out in the current framework, at least as far as I could remember, that talks about specific eligibility in that regard. One of the things, this is one of the TPO things, should we consider including a return on investment analysis as part of safety scoring? So we currently have these things in the eligibility or in the analysis tools: crash frequency and crash rate for highway, bike ped, and PE only, crash frequency reduction, safe access to transit, and PSAP priority corridor for transit. So lots of different things. Those are all existing data sets that we can access. The reason why we may want to talk about ROI is because the TPO has a huge federal grant right now to develop an ROI tool for consideration as part of the safety scoring for TPO projects for the TAC work that's happening on the TPO side, the long range plan, et cetera. As that tool starts to develop, I think it would be a great asset for Cvta to tap into, to look at additional types of scoring evaluation based on ROI. That's something I think nationally that a lot of agencies and DOTs are starting to get more into, and being on the forefront of that with resources provided by our own TPO, I think makes a lot of sense from the Cvta side. That will be not on eligibility, that will be evaluation. Another topic to think about: should we allow allocations from a project commitment to be used to leverage a smaller segment of the original alignment? That is something that we have done this year even, and we just don't have it in the current framework. But I think it, with the proper criteria, it makes sense, especially with the rising cost of everything and inflation, to be able to take a regionally awarded project and allow for a smaller portion of that to be funded, considering additional maybe returns or additional requirements on the remainder of that section in the future. And I know that's something that Chesterfield has moved through with at least one of their regional projects this year. So I think that should be something we discuss as a more formal inclusion in the framework. Okay, two more. Regional project eligibility. We want to make sure that our network, if you remember back in the overview slides, we have a map now of currently eligible corridors. We want to make sure that that network aligns with TPO guidelines. It would provide a pathway for regional project funding in each locality, could ensure regional needs are met with less frequent updates. I know everybody loves to consider the network as many times as possible, but it might be nice to have a resource that is really a little bit more foolproof, that is not going to require annual updates. So I think that looking at some ways, and this would require probably a whole meeting all by itself in terms of eligibility network, but talking through some of the work that the TPO is doing and how we can all work together to think about this network in a maybe a little bit different way than what we currently have in the framework is at least worth a discussion. And then finally, we have requirements in the code to update our population data on a regular basis using Weldon Cooper data. It's predominantly using the most recently preceding decennial census, but every 5 years in between that census, we are to use the population estimates made by the Weldon Cooper Center to update population of each county and city when that data is available. And part of the framework uses the population data to determine the amount of applications available to each locality as part of the biannual cycle. So that would be something that we should be considering as we update the framework for next year. I am done. If anyone has comments or questions, we will update our list if this and send that out to everybody for review before the next meeting. If you have additional ideas, comments, questions that you think should be added to the discussion list, please get them to me at your convenience, but hopefully prior to 10 days ahead of the next TAC meeting, so that we can make sure it is officially part of the agenda. And we'll, assuming that the authority takes the action to recommend TAC, look at all these things. We'll set it up so there's bite-sized chunks for each meeting that we can consider without dragging everybody into a second hour.
I see Barb's hand. The floor is yours.
Chet, can you give me a little bit more info on number 2, which is the comprehensive plan item? You're saying show local alignment regardless of mode. What do you mean by that?
I think mode is probably not the right word. I think my thought there was, should we be looking at more than just highways in terms of inclusion in the comprehensive plan? We have 7 different categories for eligibility. Should we look at bridges? Should we look at transit, bike ped? Inclusion of each of these different types of things in a comp plan as part of the eligibility criteria.
Okay. And then on number 6, regional project eligibility network aligns with TPO guidelines. What TPO guidelines?
I think those are being developed. Miles, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, I can address that. So, Barb, as you know, in the LRTP process, every round we have to determine sort of what the highway network is that's regionally important and which projects we want to include in that iteration. One of the recommendations in the draft LRTP, which is slated to be adopted in September, is to stabilize that network and just lock it in so that we don't keep changing which roadways we're looking at, so that we have continuity from plan to plan. So it's the same sets of projects that we're looking at. So part of this is an attempt to, on our end, line up with what the CVTA's already got in place and figure out kind of what we've got today, which also includes, I think, the full national highway system and state primaries. And is there a balance that we can combine it with the CVTA to have just one regional network across both bodies, that we're looking at the same projects in the LRTP, we're looking at the same projects at the CVTA side.
Okay. It seems like there are a few things that are still gelling between the ROI and the what Miles was just explaining. So those might be items that we push later for discussion when we know more about them.
Yep.
That's all I had.
Excellent. Great questions. Any others from folks? Amy, did you come off mute?
Oh, I did. I was agreeing with Barb.
Oh, fair enough.
Yep. Thanks, Daniel.
Excellent. All right. Yeah, definitely noted. Thank you, Barb and Amy, for that. If not, Chet, do you want to do the quick rundown of the timeline that we anticipate?
Yeah, I think generally the idea was for us to take up some bite-sized chunks of the framework, probably through November-ish timeframe before the holidays, and then work towards drafting our updates in the early spring, getting something back to the board for TAC and then board and finance committee to consider heading into late spring, early summer, so that we have the new framework adopted and ready to go when applications are ready to be developed and opened next July for round 5.
Excellent. All right. And we'll definitely, I think, dive more into all of this. But I appreciate Chet for that overview. It's very helpful. I know this is an onerous process. So thanks to all CVTA staff for helping guide us through it. Any final thoughts from TAC members before we wrap up this agenda item? If not, Chet, please move us through item number 9.
Sure. This is actually not going to be super drawn out. In the packet is a staff report showing timeline and deadlines for end of fiscal year FY26 reporting. So I did want to report that included in the packet is the finalized local quarterly report, which shows all local spending reported by localities for FY26. You can each use that to work through your offices to get the annual certifications signed. That is what the certifications accompany. So please go ahead and do that if you haven't already. I do. He's not even here, but I was going to give flowers to Joe Baidunas. We already had the annual certification for Hanover, but working on. We'd just like to have everybody else's in by the September 15th is the goal, so that we can get that done for the year. In terms of regional quarterly reporting, those are all complete as well. So good job, everybody. Our FY27 local allocations plan, which is our projections in terms of what each locality is reporting they intend to use the local funds for this coming year, has been completed by everyone except for one locality, which I believe is just awaiting some feedback from our staff. So for the all intents and purposes, that is completed as well. So thank you all for that. The final thing to report is the spend down plans. That is the biggest hurdle for everybody. And as of this morning, I do have feedback from every jurisdiction as well as VDOT. So that can be finalized now, and staff's going to be working on that to finish up the master spend down plan. And we can then incorporate that in some of our newer reporting tools for Finance Committee, and they can use that data to better predict when regional funds can be reinvested and see some of that additional interest income that has been useful from time to time for advancing projects. So thank you all for your responsiveness on the spend down plans. As we've said, that's going to be a biannual thing, so we'll try and do that again at the end of the calendar year. We'll probably send out reminders November timeframe for TAC to work on getting those updates done, and that'll be super helpful. So I think, Mr. Chair, that's all I had, unless there are any other comments or questions about the process.
Yeah, any comments or questions from folks on TAC? Great work, everyone, being on time with reporting. And if not, I'm not seeing any on my end, then we can go ahead and move forward with CVTA TAC member comments, if anyone has something to share. I'll go ahead and jump in. City of Richmond is hosting an event as part of our ongoing lecture series around our pedestrian safety master plan on August 19th at Main Street Station, and I can share the Eventbrite invite with everyone. We'll have Jarrett Walker and Associates come through, so I know a lot of folks on this call participated in a workshop looking at scenario planning for GRTC. This is going to be more of just sort of a fun lecture series with Scudder Wag, talking about the importance of transit planning and connections to safe pedestrian infrastructure as well, and how both of those investments undergird each other. So if anyone's interested, or if you know that there are folks in your localities that might be interested, happy to share the information with y'all. Should be a fun event. Again, it's August 19th, so that's next Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. at Main Street Station. But I can share that info with everyone. Otherwise, I think we've got our next meeting September 1st at 1 p.m. You'll see us here on Microsoft Teams again. Thanks, Chet and everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.